Thank you. It was great to hear your talk. I've been a fan of your work. I'm going to open up with sharing a graphic novel, images from a graphic novel that I'm working on with illustrator Steve Green and storyteller Anita Doran, based in Paris. Story opens up with a microbe attached to a bioaerosol that descends upon Paris and an apartment complex, and it lands on a tree. I'm realizing maybe now we should factor a cow into our story. Once this bacteria, which Latin name is noli timere, which means do not be afraid, lands on the tree, it reproduces and colonizes the leaves of the tree. It infects the tree, and then it wafts into the closest apartment room. It colonizes surfaces in this room and the apartment manager, Leroy, who's based on a real character, Leroy, who I met, who is infatuated with Elvis Presley. Leroy then carries the microbe throughout the built environment, through all of the different apartments, and rather than making people sick and killing everyone in the apartment and ultimately Paris, this bacteria makes people well, and it does many other wonderful things to all the individuals that are infected. Now, this is a science fiction graphic novel, so we can make this bacteria do anything that we want. But what I'm asking you today is it science fiction, the concept that microbes that are in the indoor environment can make people well instead of sick? When I was an engineering student at UC Berkeley, I was taught that microbes were pollutants in the indoor environment. We used, this is when my last name was Booher, and I've very gratefully took on the last name Green. We were taught using the principles of physics and chemistry how to model the fate and transport of microbes in the indoor environment as if they were any other pollutant. Our understanding of microbes in the indoor environment is much more nuanced now. This is a visualization of a literature review that I performed at Phylogen, where we scraped the abstracts of all of the articles that are hosted at MicrobeNet, which is led by Jonathan Eisen. Every node in this network is an article, and articles are close together, are linked based on the words and phrases in each article. And the take-home message from this literature review that I performed is that indoor microbes impact health. We know that from the case of hospital-acquired infections. We know that building design and operations impact the indoor microbiome. And if you take these two concepts and couple them, it suggests that we can operate current buildings and design future ones to promote beneficial microbes and inhibit harmful ones. I'm going to share some data linked to these ideas, illustrating ways that it may be possible to design the indoor environment to influence the types of microbes that reside in them. And I'm going to start with the very first study that we did at the Biology and Built Environment Center in this area focused on hospitals. Providence Health and Services in Portland really wanted to know, how do these energy-intensive mechanical ventilation systems influence the air in a hospital environment? So what we did was we sampled air on the roof of this hospital, and we sampled air in patient rooms. Two types of patient rooms. One, business as usual, where they were using this mechanical ventilation system, and one where we routed that air to the outdoor environment, and we simply opened the windows. Very old-fashioned concept, and let the outdoor Portland air into the hospital rooms. And this is what we found. This is an ordination diagram similar to what Rob was showing. And what we found was really stunning to me when I first saw this data. I had assumed that any indoor environment would have bacteria that were a subset of what you found in the outdoor environment. But we didn't find that. We found that rooms that are mechanically ventilated had bacterial communities that are commonly found in the human mouth and on human skin. and that outdoor air had bacterial communities commonly found in soil and on plant leaves, and that rooms with open windows had somewhere in between. We replicated this type of analysis at the Little's Business Complex at the University of Oregon. At the University of Oregon, if you're a faculty in the business school, you have a choice. You can have an office that's either mechanically ventilated or one that's window ventilated. So we sampled the dust in these office rooms, and what we found was a very similar pattern. Faculty offices that had mechanical ventilation had microbes in their dust that were very similar to what you would find in the human microbiome, whereas rooms that were window ventilated had outdoor environmental microbes. So these results are meaningful. This again is looking at this in an ordination diagram format. It's more evidence that ventilation design impacts the indoor microbiome. And the reason this matters is because not only it may be potentially linked to human health, but it's also relevant when you think about sustainable design and the energy that we're currently using for this type of mechanical ventilation design. The last story that I'm going to tell you is based on a project that we conducted at Phylogen for a Fortune 50 company in Silicon Valley who invests a lot of resources into worker health and productivity. They had known from their own research that office design is linked to worker health and productivity. And this company wanted to know, does office design influence the indoor microbiome? And through that, they're interested in whether or not, if the indoor microbiome can mediate worker health and productivity. We did a lot of work for this client. I'm going to focus on the work that we did for them surrounding ventilation design. They wanted to simulate natural ventilation in their office environment. So what we did was they typically have a three-filter system in their mechanical ventilation design, and they run it in a recirculated mode. And what they did was they had us sample the indoor environment for over a week under that type of design, and then they pulled out all the filters and ran 100% outside air into their building for over a week. We took over 600 samples, air samples, over the course of several weeks for this project. And we then ran a data analytics tool where we clustered samples together if they had similar bacterial and fungal communities. And this is what we found. These are all of the different treatments in this study design. We also sampled outdoor air, which is in the green. The most important thing that we learned from this is if you look at the top of the network, regardless of what the ventilation mode was, you really see a strong effect of having people in the indoor environment. So those all clustered towards the top of the network. Whereas at the bottom of the network, these were the treatments where there were no people in the office, so on the weekends and at night. And this is when you also see the strongest effect of ventilation design. That's when the network data points, the nodes, are the farthest apart from one another. So what this means is if you're a designer and you're focused on ventilation, microbial indoor environmental quality is, you have to think about both occupancy and ventilation. And also what it means is if you want to do something to flush out the human microbiome in the indoor environment, you can do that at night. So again, my premise is that rather than asking how can we keep microbes and thinking of them as pollutants out of the indoor environment, can we use design principles that factor in biology, physics, and chemistry to create a healthier space. And I want to share a visualization here representing some of the new work that we're doing at the Biology and Built Environment Center focused on the dust microbiome, which is laden with all kinds of things, human skin and insect parts. In the past, we've been primarily focused on the biology of dust by looking at the types of bacteria and bacteria and fungi that are in dust. But we're also now beginning to look at chemicals in dust, antimicrobials and plasticizers and flame retardants, for example, so that we can understand the relationship between the chemistry and biology of dust, and also understand not only how do our design choices influence indoor environmental quality, but our lifestyle choices. So how do the types of personal care products that we're using in the indoor environment influence the place where we spend 90% of our lives and our health? Thank you.
So any quick clarification questions, please use the microphone.
I have a quick clarification question. In Portland, do you mostly have AC or swamp coolers?
Pardon me?
In the Portland buildings you were looking at, do you have AC or swamp coolers?
AC.
Thank you.
Yes. And just something to keep in mind is that what you would find in Portland, which is one of the most green, beautiful places on Earth with regards to these results, may be very different than what you would find in a highly polluted urban environment.
Do you have results from airplane air circulation or lack thereof?
I don't. I've always wanted to do that, but I have learned that airlines are not incentivized to fund that type of work.
Did you do any studies of the effects of plants in an indoor environment?
We're doing that now. We have a climate chamber where in the past we put humans in the climate chamber to measure the human microbial cloud, and we are now quantifying and characterizing the plant and dog microbial cloud using the same chamber.
Also, in many parts of the country, there's a big difference between, let's say, winter and summer environments in terms of much more open windows in the summer. And have you done any seasonal variation analysis?
Yes, we're funded by the EPA now to look at the impact of weatherization on homes in the Pacific Northwest, and we're looking across seasons and looking at, like you say, homes in summer and winter environments.
We'll leave any additional questions for the panel discussion. So let's thank Jessica again.